Are you ready to launch your career to new heights? Visit careers.dish.com/technician now and uncover a world of exciting opportunities waiting just for you. From cutting-edge technology to a supportive work environment, Dish has everything you need to thrive. Don't wait any longer to kickstart your next opportunity. Apply today and join the Dish family where innovation meets opportunity. Visit us online at careers.dish.com/technician. Your future starts now.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Archaeology Show. TAS goes behind the headlines to bring you the real stories about archaeology and the history around us. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Archaeology Show, episode 237.
On today's show, we tour the ancient history of the Greek island of Naxos, including the Portara, the Temple of Demeter, and the colossal abandoned Kouros. Let's
dig a little deeper into that fine Naxian marble. Welcome to the show, everyone. How's it going?
It's going. It's been a week.
It's been a week for sure.
You could probably hear it in our voices, but
yeah,
we managed to both get sick this week.
Yeah.
Yay.
You for the second time in Greece.
I know. I don't understand what I did to deserve to get two colds in one trip. It's ridiculous.
I know. Well, because we had to delay our recording, if you're listening to this in real time, we're actually recording the day before, but it's cool because we've got this new Airbnb. It's our last week in Greece and we're in Athens, and our first night in Athens, if you've been following along, we had a pretty decent view of the Parthenon from our hotel room.
Yeah,
right?
But it was like leaning out the side of the balcony. You know, like you had to pull the chair off into the far corner to actually have the view. Yeah,
well, this one, we're on the 5th floor, the top floor of a apartment building, I guess, whatever it is. And the first floor is the living room, kitchen where we're sitting now, and you can see the Parthenon from a corner of the deck there. Then you go up to the next floor where the bathroom is, and there's a deck out there and a table and chairs, and you can see the Parthenon really well from there. And then you take the spiral staircase up to the roof where it's just like unobstructed, awesome.
Yeah.
Here's the Parthenon.
And weirdly enough, the Parthenon is almost best viewed at night because they light it up. And especially at like twilight, like it is right now, you've got this beautiful like midnight blue sky behind it. And then it's lit up and it's just really beautiful. We're very excited to have that as our view for the next week until we leave anyway. So.
Yeah, they light it up just like the ancient Greeks did. So,
Yeah, just like them. I mean, the Greeks were pretty good and all, but I don't think they had floodlights.
Right. Well, we were not going to talk too much about that because we can also see from all three of our decks the Archaeology Museum, which is basically a couple streets over, but it's a massive black imposing building. So we're going to go tour that, and we're going to see the Acropolis because the Parthenon's not the only thing on the Acropolis.
Yeah.
There's other stuff there.
That always confused me. We can talk about it more, but the Acropolis is like the city center basically with all of their government buildings back in the day. Yeah. And the Parthenon was just one of them. Government and religion and all of that.
I'll get this kind of wrong, but polis means city.
Yeah.
And acro means kind of top or hill.
Oh, right. And they were,
It's the city hill.
It was the hill. Yeah.
It's the stuff that's up there, right?
Yep.
The first time I knew of an Acropolis was actually, and where I heard that term was I took a tour of the city of Lindos on the island of Rhodes back when I was in the Navy in 1996. We did a med cruise, and they have an Acropolis.
Yeah.
And I think it was a Temple of Athena or something like that. That was their thing at their Acropolis.
At their top.
The Parthenon is just one thing at this Acropolis, but it's like the big thing that you can see from everywhere.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we've made it pretty clear what we're doing here, but we've got a lot of episodes about Greece coming.
Yeah.
And it's because we're here and we're experiencing these things, and we think it's really fun to share our experience like on the ground, going to visit these places, and then also doing research about them so that we can have that background too. So we've got sort of a series of episodes coming that are a combination of research about these places and also our personal experiences visiting them.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to start with here with this episode.
Yeah. And this one was actually intended to be the island of Naxos and the things we saw there, and Crete, where we just came from today for the last week. But it turns out
there's so much.
There's way too much to talk about both.
There's just so much. And these places are just so full of history.
Yeah.
I thought for sure Naxos, which was the island in the Cyclades that we first stayed at, I was like, there can't be that much there. We'll have a segment maybe to talk about this, maybe two. And Yeah, it turns out there's just so much more to say.
There is a lot.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's get started talking about Naxos. You can fly to Naxos, but you can take a ferry to Naxos.
Yeah.
And a lot of people take ferries to Naxos. And they've got these. It's a whole other thing we could talk about. If you want to chat us up on our Roadster Adventures Instagram.
Yeah.
We can talk about how cool it was to watch the sea jets, which are these gigantic catamarans.
Yeah.
And they just come in, they flip their butts around in like 5 seconds. They back up, dump all the people out, hit the brakes.
Like, it literally feels like they're dumping them. Like I saw guys standing out there like whistling and like moving their arms like faster, faster. Get off of here.
The boat's barely tied down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is quite a sight. But they know what they're doing and they do it every day, all day long. So
it takes like 10, 15 minutes tops, maybe even less.
Yeah.
And they've got people in cars off, people in cars on, and they're out and on to the next trip. And they do insane. 30 to 40 knots when they're traveling. And
those ferries connect all of these islands together. So we were on Naxos, which is the biggest of the islands in the Cyclades. Or Cyclades? Or
it depends on who you are and how you pronounce it.
Yeah. So we were on that island, which is the biggest one, which does see a fair amount of traffic because it is, one of the larger islands, and the city of Naxos Town, or Tora, as they call it sometimes.
Yeah.
That is one of the bigger cities in the area. But I mean, it's going to Mykonos and Santorini and Paros and all these other little islands in between. Yeah. And then Crete, which is not technically part of the Cyclades, but it is further south, and the ferries go down there too. So it's just like a highway of ferries, and you can get to any of them. And it does make me think that like in ancient times, it was probably kind of the same thing. Now they couldn't get there in a couple hours like they do today. It would have taken a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But those sailors back in the day, the ancient Greeks and the people that came before and after them, who were sailors, they were people of the water, they would know how to maneuver between these islands so well. And that's probably why you find settlements for ancient people on all of these islands going back a really long time. So, yeah.
Well, one of the first things you see, aside from the town itself, when you're coming in by ferry, now, much as it was for the last few thousand years of this being a bustling area, is the Portara.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to talk about first.
Yeah. And I'm not going to lie. When I decided to book us this Airbnb, because I was looking at all the islands trying to decide, we knew we wanted to spend a week, and we were just picking one basically to spend that week.
Yeah.
And I definitely heavily weighed the Portara as one of my reasons for booking the Airbnb that I did, because we had a view of it from our balcony, which was just so cool. Yeah. I kept looking out the window and pointing at it and going, look, archaeology. From my bedroom, you never get that. Not in the States anyway. So
I know. I wish it hadn't been so windy that whole week we were there.
It was very windy.
Because we had a rooftop balcony there too, but it was so windy. It was uncomfortably windy to sit up there and just kind of watch.
Beating sun. I'll have to say, Greece has been amazing, but they don't do shade very well.
No.
On their rooftops.
Yeah.
It's kind of just endure the sun if you want to be up here.
Right.
Is what it is. So.
All right. So what's the Portara?
Yeah.
So basically, it's a massive doorway. That's the only thing that remains. And it was a unfinished temple to Apollo.
Yeah. And it's built on what's called a little islet.
Yeah.
The islet of Palatia. And during ancient times, it was connected to the northern side of the Naxos port by a narrow strip of land. But today they've kind of turned it into this man-made causeway that you can walk across. It's all made of stone and everything. It's a neat little walk to go with water on either side of you. Watch out. The waves will come up and splash you, especially when it's windy. But then it takes you out to this really imposing, huge doorway to nowhere, as it turns out, on this little hilltop on this islet.
Yeah. And on the kind of the west side of this causeway where the ferry and port is, if you look down, it's all built up so where you can kind of take these steps down to this lower part right by the water there. And you see these old locals. They go out there and swim probably every day in that little protected area, because the wind is
heads bobbing.
Because the wind is often probably coming from the other side. So it's a little tiny protected area there. And you see sailboats anchoring out there too. But it's really cool. I can imagine people have been, locals have been probably swimming in that part of the area for 4,000 years.
Probably because it was a strip of land, like we said before. It was this man-made causeway, so it's always been somewhat protected.
Been kind of a natural port.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So there's some cool myths around this particular islet. Supposedly, it is exactly where Ariadne, which was the Minoan princess, who was the daughter of King Minos. Yeah. And
we'll talk about in the next episode.
We will, because that's all Crete stuff.
Yeah.
But she was abandoned by her lover Theseus after he killed the Minotaur on the island of Crete on this little islet of Palatia. And so that might be in part why they sort of just that little islet had such importance to this community.
Yeah.
And why they were starting to build a temple there. So in the 6th century BCE, Naxos was at its peak, right?
Yeah.
And it was ruled by the tyrant Lygdamis,
yeah, something like that.
Lygdamis, Lygdamis. And basically, he wanted the biggest and most impressive building visible as you come into the port of Naxos.
Which is weird because rulers don't usually want stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, no, super surprising.
Yeah, they're pretty chill.
So he decided to order the construction of this gigantic temple, basically. And that's why the doorway that is still there now is so freaking huge, because it was going to be an absolutely giant temple.
Yeah.
But before it could be completed, Naxos went to war with the Greek island of Samos, which is closer to Turkey, part of that island chain over there, like where Rhodes is and stuff like that. So, but they went to war and the construction was stopped because of the war. And they had only gotten to the huge doorway and some of the columns and the foundation and stuff like that. And they just never picked it back up because Lygdamis was overthrown in 506 BCE. And that was the end of his gigantic temple. It was going to be like at least 100 feet high with a huge peristyle made of columns, which that's the columns that you think of when you think of a Greek temple. So, yeah. As
with a lot of things you'll probably hear about if you read about Greek history, in the Middle Ages, a Christian church was built on top of it. So they just said, hey, this looks like a cool place. They thought a temple would be neat there. Yeah. Let's build one ourselves. Right. So a Christian church was built. And then like a lot of other things in Greek history, it was torn down probably by the Venetians. So, because the Venetians were all over this place, we found out.
All over. There's evidence, and we talked about this in the last episode too. Yeah,
with all over Croatia, Montenegro.
All of it. The Venetians had their little paws on everything in this part of the world. And they just were conquering all the seas, and the Aegean was no different.
Yeah, they dismantled the church basically to get to the marble underneath with the temple. And they used that to build the castle, which was right behind the place where we were staying. And you could just walk up all those little small streets, and before you realized it, you were kind of just like in the castle.
Yeah, like you would see this really big, tall wall. And you're like, gosh, that looks an awful lot like a castle wall. And then you walk up like a set of stairs or up a little winding street, and all of a sudden it's just like castle walls on either side of you. And you're inside of this Venetian fortress, basically. It's so cool.
The only reason the Portara is still there, and then there's a bunch of other marble blocks if you go see this ever. Yeah. Or you take a look at some of the, actually we have some highlighted stories from Naxos in our Roadster Adventures thing. I should probably put some of these in the ArcPodNet Instagram as well, because that would be really cool now that we're talking about this.
Yeah, for sure.
Either way, the Portara was too heavy to move. Yeah. Too big. So they just basically left it there, which honestly kind of surprises me that they couldn't figure that out. But it was too heavy and too big to move. But they did use what they could move to help build the castle. So
do you think that even to a conquering group of people that the Venetians were coming in and taking over these islands, do you think that they could have kind of looked at it as a landmark, well, like maybe they were like explaining to their other sailor warrior buddies, like, oh yeah, go past that island with the big doorway thing and, go down the west side or whatever. Like maybe they almost were like, well, it's a pretty good landmark. Like it's hard to move to, let's leave it.
I mean, that's one possibility. Yeah. The other thing is we tend to, and this is one thing archaeologists and historians can't do, and it's difficult not to do, but you can't look at history through the lens of the present, right? So one of the things that I've really been, I really have always thought about, but it really makes it sink home when you come to a place like this where everything is thousands of years old and there's just so much history. And these people, just build apartments and restaurants. We had dinner in a restaurant that's like in the highest part of the castle, right? And it's where these nuns used to be and this whole thing. And it's just all this stuff. They don't have this reverence towards that kind of stuff like we do. Like I was reading about that sycamore, I think it was, that was cut down on Hadrian's Wall, the one that was in the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves movie that this teenager cut down. Yeah. Well, they had to cut it even more to actually officially remove it. And now they've taken the pieces of the trunk to an undisclosed location while they try to figure out what to do with it to preserve it. And the stump is being protected, and they took seeds from it. and they're hoping to maybe grow another one and maybe put it on its spot. And I'm like, why? It's a tree.
It's a tree.
I mean, it sucks that this kid was stupid enough to cut it down, but my God, get over it, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. That's a whole other conversation. But the point is, I don't know if people back 400 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago thought the same way about history and other people's history, especially the same way that a lot of people do today, especially Americans. You know?
Yeah. Well, we know that when the Christians were coming in, they certainly didn't think about it the same way. They were very interested in just plopping churches down on top of all of these temples and these buildings that already existed, basically.
I know nobody really does this today, but I mean, the common way to overcome a people was to take their language, their religion, and their education and make it something else.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that was to destroy the symbols of the past. And we did that to Native Americans. By we, I mean United States. I saw something on a Native American Instagram channel that I follow through one of my socials. And the guy wrote something, he was doing this native dance. And in the caption, it was, you know, if you read about the history of Indian schools in US and Canada, it's not the history of Native Americans. It's the history of the US and Canada. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with Native Americans because they stole everything from them by trying to take their language, take their culture, take everything from them. Yeah.
They tried to Borg them.
Right. And that's what's been done through history. And that's why they tear down all these symbols and try to put up their own. So with that, we're going to tear down this segment and come back on segment 2 and talk about the Temple of Demeter. Back in a minute.
Back to school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop the latest school styles with an extra 25% off during Tanger Style, our biggest sale of the season, now through August 25th. Plan your trip at tanger.com.
People are driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. The hiring process can be slow and overwhelming. Simplify hiring with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform. With over 350 million global monthly visitors according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ12. That's Indeed.com/PODKATZ12. Terms and conditions apply.
Chicken tacos should only be trusted to chicken professionals.
That's where we come in. Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One comes with pico de gallo and creamy chipotle ranch. And the other comes with bacon, lettuce, tomato, and avocado ranch. Chicken experts since 1990. Chicken taco experts since now. Order yours today in the Zax Rewards app. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
Welcome back to episode 237 of the Archaeology Show, and we're continuing our Grecian extravaganza. And we took a tour on one of the days that we were there, a bus tour, because we didn't rent a car on Naxos.
No, it's a small island, and everything we needed was right in the port town.
Although there's a lot of cool stuff to see. We probably could have rented a car.
There is. I know. Now that we know how big the island is.
Oh, my God.
And you can easily rent a car from the airport in Athens, drive it onto the ferry, drive it off the ferry, as long as you have a place to take it to with parking. The place we were at, we would not have been able to park but
don't take that advice. I would actually say don't do that, because it cost us
expensive.
It cost us like $250 for the ferry ride just to get there, right?
Yeah. So, well, that one was cheaper, but altogether, all the ferries we did.
Yeah. So, but it wasn't cheap, and we rented a car for 7 days on Crete, and it cost $130.
Yeah, that's true.
So, or 130 euros, which was about $140.
Yeah.
Right. So. It's just, rent the car when you get there. If you don't know how to drive stick, you might be SOL. But, otherwise,
I do not. And I had no desire to drive on the island of Crete. People in this country are crazy. I'm sorry.
Listen,
all you Europeans with your tiny little cars in the way you drive, you're crazy. All of you.
Listen, just if you have to rent a stick and you've never driven one before, it's been a long time, just remember, giving it more gas will always save you from killing it. And if you can't find it, grind it. So
it's a rental after all.
I know. If you're in the wrong gear, just find another one. So
I don't know. I think you did pretty good.
Yeah. Also, the little shift light that says shift up and shift down is 100% wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So listen to your engine. Anyway, so we took this tour and it was just a half day tour. You know, we were working. We didn't have time to do the full day because the full day only included like swimming at a beach.
I think it was beach stops.
And
yeah.
It was too windy. And
I don't know if you guys have seen Barbie. However,
I don't beach well.
We've been talking about beaching and how Chris really does not beach well.
I don't beach well at all.
He just like, he sits there with his arms crossed and his eyes kind of squinty usually. And it just this look of like, why am I here? Like the whole time.
Rachel asked me while we were on Crete what my like best beach situation would be. And I was like a desk and an office chair with my computer and Wi-Fi.
And probably like a canopy so that you were fully shaded.
Yeah. And like a view of the sea. Like I don't need to be on a chair.
Balcony. You want a balcony?
I'll be on the sand. I'll put my toes in the sand. But you know, I'm probably going to edit a podcast or do some work.
Yeah, you really don't beach well at all.
So anyway, other people that didn't beach well were people that went to the Temple of Demeter. So actually they probably beached very well.
Well, maybe. They were actually kind of far from the water because they were more of an inland. This temple is a little bit more inland on Naxos. Not too far, but definitely not like views of the water or anything like that.
Yeah. So the Temple of Demeter, late archaic Greek temple, it was built around 530 BCE. But one little aside for this, because this was near the end of our tour, it was built completely out of high quality Naxian marble.
Yeah, and I didn't really intend to talk about this so much, but then I started doing research on the Naxian marble, and it's so interesting.
Yeah.
So we have to talk about it really quick. It's been used since ancient times, so there's our archaeology connection. Yeah.
It's in fact we saw somewhere one of the tour guide or somebody showed us a picture of a thing about Naxian marble it being sold at a shop in Paris.
Yeah. It's so high quality. It's still exported today.
Yeah.
And the part of the reason why it's super high quality is because it's 90 up to 98% calcite. And calcite
which apparently is a good thing for marble.
Yes, exactly.
I didn't know that.
The calcite is a crystal that is usually transparent and it gives marble this appearance of depth. And in the Naxian marble in particular, those calcite crystals are particularly large. So you get even larger, like you get even more depth basically with these larger chunks of transparent crystals.
Mm-hmm.
It tends to have this blue-gray shimmer, and that makes it appear almost translucent when the light shines just right. I think our tour guide was saying that like the light would almost just like shine right through the roof tiles that were made out of this. So, yeah. Yeah,
some of the marble deposits are more gray in color and a little more solid and can be striped and things like that. That just indicates impurities.
More impurities.
We see obsidian and chert and stuff like that with impurities. You see the striping and things like that.
I know everybody has this image of like pure white marble in their heads, or maybe like some perfect veining going through it. But it's not always like that. And,
no, of course not.
It could be more and more gray depending on the impurity level.
Yeah. The Kouros we're going to talk about later was made of this gray type of Naxian marble.
Yep.
Yeah. And we mentioned a Kouros, if you're paying attention, a few episodes ago, randomly.
Yeah.
Not knowing we were going to see one.
Right.
I had never even heard of the word Kouros before, but with like 4 or 5 episodes ago, we had an article about a Kouros.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Anyway, the Naxian marble is still mined today, and it's extremely valuable. And it was used for creation of roof tiles at Olympia and on the Athenian Acropolis.
Yeah.
So we'll see some here.
Used it in the ancient times. They're still using it today. So.
And the Temple of Demeter that we're going to talk about. So they had a little museum, and they had some rebuildings and I think some recreations of some stuff in the museum. But they said the roof tiles were these like rounded roof tiles like you would see on a roof in like
a terracotta,
New Mexico.
Yeah, like that terracotta curved tile shape.
But marble.
But marble.
Yeah, and they said
so heavy.
They said that during the high sunshine of the day, it would have been practically translucent, letting a lot of light through the stone roof. Yeah. I just can't imagine how cool that would look.
Insane, right?
Yeah.
I wish that one of those roofs was still standing because it would just be, I feel like with the light coming through like that, it would just be so like ethereal almost, you know? What a cool thing to experience.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the actual temple. We'll stop waxing on about this amazing marble. Right. But we did get to see the quarries from the tour too.
Yeah.
We were driving through the mountains on Naxos, and you can see the quarries, and you could see the mine trucks up there too, still mining away. This
big haul trucks.
This deposit just keeps on giving, I guess. There's just more marble to quarry.
Okay, I'm definitely going to put stories up, pictures up in the stories, or maybe just on the ArchPodNet, ARCHPodnet Instagram page. So
Yeah.
go check it out, because I took pictures of the spoils going down, just the garbage marble that was discarded. These like car-sized boulders that are just down the hill.
Of this like white marble just like pouring down the hill.
Yeah.
I guess we are going to keep waxing poetic about marble, because we just keep talking about it. But it's really amazing stuff, and it plays such a huge role in the ancient Greek structures.
Right.
And it still does today. So it's a resource that has a lot of history and value. So,
all right. Let's learn about the meter.
Okay. Let's. Did you say the meter? Oh my God. Drink your wine.
My wine that was apparently grown in the same area where Socrates came up with some of his philosophies. Oh. According to the sommelier I talked to.
Isn't the best thing about traveling, learning about meeting people.
BS a sommelier will tell you.
No, meeting people who are just so proud of their country. Yes. And they always have all these amazing little stories to tell you, all these tidbits about various different things and like that it's just really fun to experience that. You have to actually talk to people to learn that kind of stuff though. Sure. So that's something that I need to remember because I don't always like talking to people. But anyway, right. So the Temple of Demeter is one of the earliest Ionic temples. Okay, I'm going to put a big asterisk here because I did read on a different website that it was called a Doric temple. So I'm not actually entirely sure. There's not a huge amount out in the world about this temple. Mm-hmm. And we read all this stuff over there, but we weren't like taking pictures of the information. So I just didn't have all that in my head. Yeah. And so I'm not really sure if it was Ionic or Doric. But let's just go with Ionic because that's what Wikipedia says. And surely somebody would have corrected it if it were wrong on Wikipedia at this point. So anyway. Sure.
Yeah.
We'll get we can tell ourselves that, but I don't know.
We'll get some notes about that for sure.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I saw it both. So I'm not sure. But.
Send all your email to a Life in Ruins podcast at gmail.com.
Right.
So
here's things that we definitely know about this structure. There's a lot of unique things. The floor plan is almost square at 13.29 by 12.73 meters. And that is very unique because Greek temples from this time period are usually rectangular.
Yeah.
Like the Parthenon. Think of that rectangular shape in your mind. The facade is on the south side. And that is unusual because it's more common to have it on the east side. That's the most common way that they face. But sometimes the west side too.
Yeah.
So south is where really like off from most temples.
Yeah.
Apparently there's no foundation platform, which is super weird for a Greek temple. And the columns decrease in thickness towards the top, whereas the more classical Greek structure, the columns always increase towards the top.
Right.
So that is also very strange. And you can see it in the pictures where the columns just get a little bit skinnier as they go up towards the top of the roof.
Yeah.
So anyway, there are a lot more unique features about this temple, but it really gets into like the weeds on it. And we don't need to go into that anymore. Right. There's just, I took a class on this stuff in college and like, oh my gosh, the historic architecture, classical archaeology people.
Yeah.
That's not what they're called. I can't remember. But anyway, definitely the technical term.
Yeah.
They really, really get into the specifics of these,
I'm sure.
of these temples. And it's just like, it's almost too much for your brain to even understand. You have all these words that are not normal words to use in everyday language. And then you're trying to like keep track of one column here and another platform there and measurements and all that. So anyway,
there's a reason for that. Everything's been studied. So if you don't study this one little indentation you found on a temple somewhere on the top of a column, then you can't get a PhD. So
it is.
Yeah. And on that, and on that horrible disappointment, let's take a break. And on the other side, we'll talk about how the Christians ruined everything.
Oh my God.
Back in a minute.
Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
Chicken tacos should only be trusted to chicken professionals.
That's where we come in. Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One comes with pico de gallo and creamy chipotle ranch. And the other comes with bacon, lettuce, tomato, and avocado ranch. Chicken experts since 1990. chicken taco experts since now. Order yours today in the Zax Rewards app. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
People are driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. The hiring process can be slow and overwhelming. Simplify hiring with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform. With over 350 million global monthly visitors according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ12. That's Indeed.com/PODKATZ12. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, welcome back to episode 237 of the Christians Ruined Everything show. No, that's not true.
Okay, so we're talking about the Temple of Demeter, and the Christians do come in and play a role here. But just really quickly, like what it was like to go and visit it. Right. It was really cool because it is up on a hill again, like these temples often are, and you could fully walk around the thing like 360 and. I don't know. It was really neat and had a great little museum with it as well. Any thoughts about going to visit it?
It felt, even though it was basically reconstructed, it was really well done.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and you could see actually some original foundations and things like that. There was not the entire thing was a reconstruction, but it really felt like you were at this old temple that people revered. And I don't think we mentioned this, but Demeter was the goddess of agriculture.
Oh, right.
That's why this was where it was. This place was surrounded by olive trees and just like agriculture all around it.
All the agriculture for the island. This was of the hub of it.
Yeah. In fact, I don't even think we could see the Mediterranean from there.
I don't think so. Yeah, there's no water view at all.
We were kind of in this huge valley, these rolling kind of hills in amongst the mountains that are on Naxos. And I do mean mountains. I don't know what you guys think of the Greek islands, but I had no idea they were so volcanic and mountainous. Yeah. They were and tall mountains.
Oh, and we almost forgot to mention Mount Zos is the mountain, the big mountain on this island. And that is supposedly like the birthplace of Zeus or something like that.
Apparently there's a cave down at the base of it where Zeus was born. Yeah. Of course.
Before he went on to do his Zeus things.
I want to put a coffee shop there. Yes.
Could you go actually see this cave? I
don't know. Nobody mentioned seeing it.
Yeah,
the tour guide didn't say anything.
No, they didn't say anything. Yeah. But yeah, this island is really steeped in like the Greek mythology for sure.
It's supposed to be the birthplace of the gods. I mean, because of Zeus.
Because of Zeus, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, Zeus wasn't he was the head god, but he wasn't the founding god. So
it's so hard to detangle the people from the mythology too, because obviously Zeus wasn't a real person. He wasn't really born there, but
they didn't think that.
It almost doesn't matter because the people thought that, right? Yeah. And it was important to them. And they had this temple that they built to the goddess Demeter, and it was because of agriculture and because they came together over agriculture in this area. And this temple really brought the people together into a community, to this place that they were worshiping or sacrificing or whatever it is that they were doing at this temple for, agriculture. So it's something that really helped develop the community in this area at that time period. It's interesting.
Well, back to the Christians ruining everything.
Your favorite topic.
The reason this temple is mostly a reconstruction is around the 6th century CE, it would have been completely dismantled. Yeah. By the rise of Christianity, basically, because a massive Christian church was built on that property. And in fact, when you're walking around the little pathway that takes you around the temple, on the outside of that pathway are the old walls of the Christian church. The ruins of it. Yeah. They're really short. They look like little rock walls. In fact, I'm not even sure that was part of it originally. It doesn't look like it. It looks like that was put there.
There's one little church that was part of it. When you first walk up, that building that is still standing is like a sort of a typical, really old school, probably Byzantine type of basilica church thing.
But very small.
but very small, very, very small. It did encompass the whole like hilltop at some point, and included either they dismantled the temple fully, or there's maybe parts of the temple that were included as part of the church, but it definitely was fully converted into a church at some point.
Yeah, so, the marble was definitely repurposed for the Christian basilica.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But of course they knew, they being the people that lived there, and then the archaeologists that came along after them knew that it was first a Greek temple and then this Christian basilica. And I think it fell out of use completely at some point. But in the mid 1900s, there were several excavations that took place to basically uncover the original Greek temple, because that's something that also happens. And it does make me a little uncomfortable sometimes that this Christian church that was built on top of it is 1,500 years old.
Yeah.
But we got to dig through that and get to the Greek temple below it, because is that somehow more important? I don't know. Maybe we just know more about the Christian temple that was built on top of it, so it's more interesting to find out about the lesser known temple below it. I don't know, but that does seem to be what happened. Although the history of the church is documented pretty well in the little museum that's there too. But anyway, it was excavated, and they realized during the excavation that there was some kind of like common curvature throughout the entire temple. I'm going to be totally honest. I don't understand exactly what that means. I think it refers to the curved shapes of the columns and the stones. And they were able to use that to basically really easily reconstruct. So they could take these materials that were part of the church or discarded outside the church or wherever they found them. And they were able to pretty easily, using this common curvature, figure out what piece went where and reconstruct it.
It's like reconstructing a broken ceramic pot. Right?
Yeah.
Like you've got a roundish piece, and you can put it almost on a template and say, okay, well, we know it probably went here.
Yeah, it was something like that, but the temple version of that, basically. So in 2001, the partial reconstruction was completed, and then the Associated Museum was opened on the area. So or on the spot. It's really cool.
Right. It was really cool being there. And I know we took a couple of pictures of, just the landscape too, looking outwards towards where the sea would be if there weren't hills there. And it was just right in the shadow of Mount Zas. And it was just really, I don't know, it was a really cool place to be. And just being on a place where, I don't know, it's different than, I don't want to belittle, and I'm not trying to at all, but it's very different feeling than being on, for some reason or another, I don't know why, but it's a very different feeling than being on a correspondingly old, like Native American site in the United States, which we have been on hundreds.
Oh yeah.
Right?
We always stop on those sites when we're passing through.
Well, not only that, but we've worked on
in the work that we've done.
Found them.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So it's, I don't know why it, for some reason, probably because, I'm going to be brutally honest, probably because we're white, and it feels like the civilization that our ancestors directly came from is really born out of these civilizations.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like an almost closer affinity to it. And it's a very different thing. I have no Greek heritage as far as I know, but when you talk about the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, and how they settled,
far and wide, right?
Far and wide. Yeah. And their influence went farther than their territory.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It's really interesting seeing this stuff that is, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years old.
And also, like, these architectural styles that we're seeing, they influence so much architecture that came after them. You go to any of the old cities in North America, and the buildings there, the older buildings, have these columns that are patterned after the things that the Greeks and Romans were doing. So you do kind of feel like you're looking at your ancestors almost a little bit when you're looking at it's at least the ancestors of the structures that you see in your own country.
Our architecture, our laws, a lot of culture, and basic structure of democracy is all from here.
Yeah, it does. It does feel very special to see it. So yeah.
All right. Well, one of the other things we saw was a giant Kouros.
Yeah.
So a Kouros is basically a naked man, a freestanding statue. Yeah. We talked about one that was found. In fact, I think a series of ones that was found a few episodes ago. That was just one of the news articles that we discussed. And there's actually a feminine name for Kouros as well, because there are naked giant female statues.
Yeah, there are. It's Kore, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I can't remember what it was.
It's very similar.
Yeah.
But those are modern names for these statues that have been created by researchers I think back in like the 1800s, they just started calling them that. So yeah, but they're often said to be either depicting Apollo or they are in association with temples to Apollo. They kind of have this like Apollo thing going on.
Well,
it's not always the case though.
It's not even just Apollo, because Apollo was kind of an idealized form of the male figure, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what these Kouroses often were, is an idealized, this is what a man looks like, this muscular sort of naked man with his arms at his side.
Beardless. They never have whiskers, I think.
Hairless, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
But they can be found in like a cemetery setting, at a tomb or whatever. They can be at various different temples. Like there was they were used for a lot of things back in ancient times, basically. Yeah. But this colossal thing is the interesting piece here.
Right.
They're usually life size. So, 6 feet ish. Mm-hmm. But you would see earlier examples that were, in the like 3 meter or 9 foot tall range, which puts it into this colossal territory.
Yeah.
And that's what these ones that are on the island of Naxos are. They are super huge. That guy that we saw, he was like 12 meters or something, right?
Oh, no, not 12 meters.
Not 12 meters.
That would have been as long as our RV.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It must have been around 9.
Probably 4 meters. 3 to 4 meters, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was a little bit bigger than that. But
yeah.
Anyway, he was in the colossal territory. He was
4 meters is pretty big.
Much bigger than a human person.
I would call that colossal.
Okay, that is colossal.
Yeah, he was big. And then the cool thing about this one was he was kind of in a recumbent position, just like lying backwards with a broken leg.
Yeah.
Because he was being basically carried down from the marble quarries where he was constructed and carved out. Like, I feel like that was just logistically, you would want to carve them at the source because you just remove a whole ton of marble, right?
Yeah.
And then carry them down. But then they like broke it.
They did.
Yeah.
And like it's what you said though. It's like a Kouros blank, basically. Like,
well, it was pretty well done.
It was like it had the whole shape there, but there was none of the fine detail. There was no facial features, no hair, no fingers, none of that stuff that you see in the really nice ones that we still have like good examples of. There's none of that yet. It was just like this sort of phantom shape of a man.
Yeah, like they took away enough marble to carry it.
Exactly. Yeah, they took, and then they were going to let it go get personalized somewhere else, probably for wherever it was going. But then they either dropped it, or maybe there was a impurity in the marble that caused the legs to fail, or something like that.
And they're just like, crap.
But they literally just like abandoned it where it fell. That's my favorite part of it. It was like a mic drop, like, well, this guy's done. Nobody's going to want him with his broken legs. So we're just going to abandon him here and walk away. So that's one of my favorite things to find. Cause you see these perfect statues in front of the perfect temple or in the museum setting, and they're always perfect. And I love the real story. Like who got fired for dropping the Colossal Kouros that was on its way to some really important temple somewhere or something like that?
Who lost their head?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite thing to think about with that. And that they just like mic dropped it and walked away. They literally didn't care enough about the land to go through the effort of moving it. It was not important enough. There was no people there, so they just like dropped it and walked away.
The thing I like is that you can just kind of find this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like somebody just like found that eventually. Like nobody cared about it at the time. But then a number of centuries later, somebody was just like, oh crap, look at this thing.
They like walking through the forest, and then there's like a face there.
Yeah.
Or like even worse, there's like genitalia, and they're like, what is this?
What is going on here?
We did mention they were naked, right? I didn't just mention that out of nowhere.
Yes.
But yeah. So
they had very Ken-like mounds. I'm not really sure what was going on there.
No detail yet.
No detail. Yeah. Yeah, they didn't beach well.
No. Oh God. No. But that was really cool. And I just love that little personal piece of human history right there. People in ancient times broke stuff too.
That's
it
right.
happened.
One of the things we didn't write about here, but as we're just wrapping up, because it was on that tour that we did, one of the last things we saw was an old olive press.
Oh, yeah.
It was a company that is still producing olives, but they don't use the old press methods anymore. Mm-hmm. But they had all the equipment in this room. It was in a room where it used to exist, right? Mm-hmm. Like they did it in this place.
Yeah.
But now it's kind of set up as an homage to this whole thing. But to just see the press where they first crush the olives, and then, get all the oil, and then they have this whole thing where they crush it, they scrape it, where they get that whole stuff
get like
apart.
A paste, basically.
It's the paste, yeah. And then they put that in this thing that these men basically just move this arm across with this big stick in it, and they keep ratcheting this thing down like on a screw
just press
the crap out of these things. And then all the oil goes into this container or into this compartment, and then they put water in it.
Yeah, like there's water is somehow helping it press more or something.
No,
right?
they put the water into where the olive oil went because they can't really get the olive oil out by itself.
Oh, right. So the water separation.
Once they do it in there, water and olive oil obviously separate really quickly.
Yeah.
And the olive oil will literally just sit as a layer on top of the water. Yeah. And they actually had a jar that the lady had that she showed us that it was separated.
Yep.
And then they're able to drain the water out and then just pull the olive oil right off the top.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. And she's like, yeah, we don't do this kind of stuff anymore. But she just like, they'd only stopped doing that in like the 60s.
Yeah.
The 1960s.
Right.
Yeah. Now it's all automated.
Yeah. Which is just crazy that they were doing it that way. She said the electricity didn't even come to the island.
Yeah.
Until like the 60s.
Something like that.
Yeah.
One other cool fact about extra virgin olive oil is extra virgin olive oil has to be the cold press method, which is because they use hot water to basically kind of help extract the oils from the pressed olives, but it has to be 160 degrees, more than that, and then it's not extra virgin.
Oh, okay.
That's cold. Well, it's not cold pressed.
It's not cold pressed. Yeah.
Extra virgin
cold pressed, you get more flavor, I would guess, which is why it's extra virgin.
So that's cold pressed, and then extra virgin is. It has to be harvested within 24 hours. It has to be pressed within 24 hours of harvesting. Yeah. And she said she was basically indicating without saying it that they kind of hit the 24-hour mark like a lot of times. I'm guessing they play fast and loose with that 24 hours.
Right.
But in order to be deemed extra virgin, it's got to be cold pressed and done within 24 hours.
Yep.
It actually doesn't have anything to do with the olives. I mean, they use a certain type of olive, I'm sure. Yeah. But it's the method that makes it extra virgin. Yeah.
And to know, again, bringing it back to the ancient peoples, they've been doing this for thousands of years, right?
Long time.
Yeah, because we still find evidence of jugs and amphorae with the olive oil in it. So it's part of the culture here, and I love that. It was such a great experience in Naxos to just like feel connected to both the ancient people of the island, but also like the way it's been brought forward into modern times too. It was a really cool place to experience for sure. And different and not off the beaten tourist track, which was kind of what we were going for. Also, it's like way cheaper than Santorini or Mykonos or any of those other ones. So that definitely factored into our choice in going here.
Yeah.
You get the same whitewashed buildings, the adorable little like alleyway streets with restaurants, and all their tables are on, stairs and stuff like that, which was a goal of mine to eat at one of those restaurants where the table was on the stairs outside the restaurant. It was so charming. I loved it. So yeah, you get all that in Naxos, and we really can't recommend it more. It was a great place.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yep.
All right. Well, next time we're going to talk about Crete and the palace at Knossos that we toured and the birthplace of the Minoan civilization.
See you next week.
All right. Later, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Archaeology Show. Feel free to comment and view the show notes on the website at www.archpodnet.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at ArchPodNet. Music for this show is called I Wish You Would Look from the band Sea Hero. Again, thanks for listening and have an awesome day. This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Cultural Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Chris Webster.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.